Jean-Pierre Jeunet is one of my favorite directors. He's directed Delicatessen, The City of Lost Children, Alien Resurrection, Amélie, A Very Long Engagement, Micmacs, The Young and Prodigious T.S. Spivet, Big Bug, and a TV pilot called Casanova. His films are visually unique and instantly recognizable. In this video, we'll explore the 5 essential elements that define Jeunet's distinctive cinematic style, from whimsical storytelling to striking visual aesthetics. Let's take a look. I think the way that Jean-Pierre Jeunet uses the camera is my favorite thing about him. I love the way he moves his camera, and Jean-Pierre Jeunet moves his camera a lot. Some critics have called his style distractingly exhibitionistic and over-calculated, but I've never felt that way. You might notice that when he moves his camera, he usually only moves it in a straight line. It's not searching or looking around. He said, quote, "I'm very strict about camera movements. I feel that they must be regular and steady. During a tracking shot, I refuse to have the camera swivel or start moving to seek out details. When I see a cameraman touch the cranks during a tracking shot, I wrap his fingers. I insist on total rigor, since I believe it lends elegance and power to the camera movement. Moreover, this is what frustrated me about the Steadicam for many years. I felt that it was unable to attain such consistency. At the same time, it's an amazing tool that allows you to do things that would be impossible otherwise, and I've finally managed to find a Steadicam operator who is so strong he manages to film it the way I like. In other words, with a steadiness similar to that of a tracking shot on rails." End quote. You might notice that a lot of Jeunet's camera movements bring characters into frame suddenly, sometimes from the top or bottom of frame. He says this is a technique that he's loved from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and has since used it in his own films. Quote, "My mania is the entrance into the frame from below. The camera moves down and allows the character to enter the frame through the foot of it. I use this technique in an abstract manner, but it makes the character's arrival incredibly dynamic. They do not appear stepping into frame, nor does the camera go looking for them. They pop up from below like a jack-in-the-box. These entrances, from the bottom or the back of the shot, are also a direct influence from Sergio Leone. I remember a scene in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in which Eli Walsh is leaning over a grave and all of a sudden a shovel lands next to him. Then the camera pulls back and we discover Clint Eastwood's boots. I often use that idea. For instance, in Delicatessen, when the old lady's ball of wool rolls over the ground, the camera pulls back at the same time and we discover the butcher's feet. This kind of movement done at ground level with a very short focal length is very impressive." End quote. Jeunet loves wide-angle lenses, really sets his movies apart visually from most of the movies being shot in Hollywood. In an interview, he once said, quote, "I love the idea of being able to summarize a whole scene in one frame, whatever the graphic nature of the frame that brings the scene to life. It's for this reason that I use virtually only short lenses. I could shoot a whole film using just an 18mm and 25mm lenses. In Alien Resurrection, I also used a 14mm lens a great deal to make the sets more imposing. Using a wide-angle lens like that allows you to have a better composed image from a graphic point of view. But at the same time, its use requires a great deal of rigor or the film can seem tacky as soon as you move the camera. I also use long focal lengths at times, but only very, very long ones. I don't use them too much because they're not a stylistic device, but rather a practical one. By alternating very short and very long focal lengths, you give an impression of greater visual richness. It's a process that the American cinema has used a great deal in recent years, but one that I feel goes against the notion of visual style. I used it a little in Alien Resurrection because it was a way of entering the Hollywood game, but on films like Delicatessen or City of Lost Children, I have always avoided it." End quote. He shoots almost all of his shots on 14 to 28mm lenses, and he said that a 35mm lens is like a long lens for him. The wide lenses have a couple of visual benefits. First, you get a wider field of view with more in focus. When you have sets and production design and costumes as great as Jeunet, you want to be able to look at them. Wide lenses capture more of the scene, providing a greater sense of space and depth. This helps the audience to get a better look at the environment and the spatial relationship between characters and objects within the frame. Another reason to use wide lenses is that when you move the camera as much as Jeunet does, wide lenses exaggerate the motion of the camera and the relative movement of objects within the frame. This can create a more dynamic and immersive experience, enhancing the sense of motion and making the shot feel more energetic. Wide lenses also allow him to move his camera into tight spaces. In almost every one of his films, he has his camera moving into or out of a hole, or pipe, or tunnel. Normally, directors don't like to shoot faces with wide-angle lenses as it can cause faces to appear stretched or exaggerated, with features like noses, foreheads, and chins becoming unnaturally prominent. The natural look provided by standard or telephoto lenses makes it easier for viewers to empathize with the characters and engage with their stories, but Jeunet uses his as part of his style. His use of wide lenses is a stylistic choice that helps put his films into their own world. He films almost all his actor close-ups with wide-angle lenses, sometimes having the camera as close as 6 or 7 inches from the actors' faces, usually slightly above or slightly below eye level. Having a wide-angle lens so close to an actor can also really emphasize any emotions we see on their faces. This is probably why he has so many close-ups of people screaming and shouting. Another trademark of Jeunet's style is shooting from a very high angle, sometimes looking straight down. He even directed a music video for Leo called L'Autre Jour, where every single shot is a high-angle shot. High-angle shots are effective in providing a broader view of the surroundings. This is useful in establishing scenes, showcasing the setting, or highlighting the scale of an event or location. Incorporating high-angle shots also adds visual variety to a film, making it more dynamic and visually engaging. It helps break the monotony of eye-level shots and can be used creatively to enhance the storytelling. Some critics have complained that high-angle shots in Jeunet's films seem unmotivated and all the shots should be from a specific point of view, but Jeunet isn't bothered by this. He says, it's God's point of view. Can't argue with that, I guess. If there's one single word that best describes Jeunet's work, it's playful. You see it in almost every one of his films, commercials, and music videos. This extraordinary creativity and inventiveness. The entire opening credit sequence of Amélie is a montage of all the fun, playful games and activities that children do. The entire film of Micmacs is basically a playful revenge story against unscrupulous arms dealers. Even the subjects he includes in his films have a playful aspect to them. Contortionists, humanoid robots and automatons, human cannonballs, imaginary friends, Rube Goldberg devices, pop-up books, talking paintings, talking photographs, talking dogs, bubble shows, trained fleas, physical comedy, unconventional musical instruments, creative thefts, human statues. He obviously has very playful and childlike sensibilities. In Micmacs, about 5 minutes and 20 seconds into the film, the main character gets shot in the head. We see the end, and then the screen goes to black, and the credits roll, complete with the names of the actors and directors, and they go on for over a minute of screen time. Of course, it's just a trick. The film isn't really over. They did the same thing in Everything Everywhere All at Once. I'm not entirely sure it works in Everything Everywhere. It draws attention to the fact that you're watching a movie with actors and directors, and it kind of takes you out of the reality the movie's trying to create. With Micmacs, though, it happens very near the beginning, so you aren't fully immersed in the reality of the story yet, and it also serves as the opening credits. And there's this other scene where Danny Boone discovers the headquarters of the two arms dealers who are responsible for the death of his father as well as his own brain damage. Ominous music starts to play, but as the camera moves down, we realize it's all in his head, and he slaps himself and it stops. What an incredible amount of work to bring in a whole orchestra to film what ends up not even being 5 seconds of screen time. Speaking of breaking the fourth wall, in Micmacs, there's another funny detail I noticed. There are movie posters for Micmacs in the film Micmacs. You can see them at various points throughout the film. I thought this was kind of funny. Maybe a little too meta, but hey, make the film however you want. The opening shot of Alien Resurrection is a set of razor-sharp teeth that we suspect is an alien, but when the camera pulls back, we see it's a perspective trick and we're actually looking at a tiny bug that gets squashed immediately. I think this is a funny gag, but it's interesting that it was actually in the original script written by Joss Whedon. Yes, that Joss Whedon. So while this may not be a playful bit that Jeunet came up with himself, I feel like it really fits his filmmaking sensibilities. There's another shot in Alien Resurrection where the captain pours someone a whiskey. The screenplay just says, Perez pours 2 whiskeys, but Jeunet adds this little detail where the whiskey is in a cube form and has to be released by applying a laser beam to it. I love this. It's just a tiny little throwaway moment, but it really helps to build this sci-fi world. Even his music is playful. Listen to one of the songs from the Amélie soundtrack. Jeunet had Jan Tiersen use a toy piano for the music because it has such a distinct and whimsical sound. In Micmacs, there are a couple songs on the soundtrack that are made up of clicks, buzzes, mechanical noises, and sound effects. Fits with the story too, as the plot is about a ragtag group of people who live in the debris of a junkyard. The sounds on the soundtrack are a way of highlighting that. Speaking of sound, there's a great gag in Delicatessen. There's something going on upstairs, wink wink, and there's this rhythmic noise that's echoing throughout the whole building. Slowly, all of the other noises in the building start to sync up to the rhythm. It's such a creative and hilarious scene that they used it for the movie's trailer. Jeunet has a knack for visually depicting intangible things like emotions, thoughts, and plot points. It's something that I've really liked about his style. In Amélie, when she sees this man she's infatuated with, we see her heart start to glow and beat fast. And then later, when she has an awkward interaction with him and thinks she's lost him, she melts into a puddle of water and splashes across the floor. There's a part where she walks with a blind man through the city, describing in detail all of the interesting things that he can't see. After she leaves, we see him have an almost religious experience as he is engulfed in warm light. These aren't real things that are happening to the characters, but it's a way of adding magical realism to the film to help emphasize these character emotions. Jeunet also shows thoughts and plot points visually. In T.S. Spivet, we see inside the sister's head to hear what she's thinking about her younger brother. It's very similar to some of the scenes in the Pixar movie Inside Out. Jeunet's talked about how he's a big fan of Pixar movies, so you might wonder if he borrowed this idea from Inside Out for his film. Except T.S. Spivet was released in 2013, and Inside Out was released 2 years later in 2015, so who knows, maybe Pixar is a big fan of Jeunet's movies. When T.S. is trying to decide if he should lie to a woman on the phone, we see him considering. When a teacher belittles him in class, we see what he wants to say in response. When he's hungry, we can see he's thinking about food. When people are remembering things, we see on screen the images in their heads. Amélie steals the key to someone's apartment and has a duplicate made. How do we know she has a duplicate made? We see it in her pocket. Remember when Danny Boone got shot in the head in Micmacs? Well, the movie actually shows us the bullet lodged in his brain, so we know how serious the gunshot is. While it's not a technique that you can use in every film, I love the way Jeunet does these moments. It seems like such an elegant solution to adding information to a scene without having exposition that might seem forced or out of place. Jeunet controls the colors on his films very carefully. He prefers warmer colors, and many of his films have an overall warm color cast to them. He often goes with a predominantly red-green color scheme with warm yellow tones. In Delicatessen, Amélie, A Very Long Engagement, and Micmacs, I think there's almost no shots containing the color white since everything is shifted toward yellow. And the color blue appears only rarely in these movies. In Delicatessen, Amélie, and Micmacs, which were all Jeunet's original stories, the color helps to define the worlds we're watching. Amélie, for instance, takes place in Paris, but it doesn't look like the Paris you've seen. It's maybe what you imagine Paris to be like without the trash and graffiti and traffic. While in A Very Long Engagement, the inviting warm tones of the countryside, in addition to giving the movie an appropriate old-fashioned sepia look, give a stark contrast to the blue and gray tones of the World War I trenches, making them seem that much more uninviting. Of his first three films, Delicatessen, City of Lost Children, and Alien Resurrection, Jeunet achieved the distinct color palettes through a combination of production design, costumes, and the specialized photochemical techniques developed by his cinematographer Darius Khondji for shooting and processing the film. But Amélie, which was released in 2001, was one of the pioneering films in the use of digital color grading. The film's unique and vivid palette was achieved through meticulous digital color correction, which was a cutting-edge technique at the time. The colors on Amélie were really pushed around, desaturating blue skies, shifting colors toward red and green. If you pause throughout the film, you can see how much green is present in the blacks. Jeunet spent 6 weeks color correcting Amélie and 7 weeks color correcting Micmacs. This is an incredible amount of time to take for color grading. There are entire films that are shot quicker than that. But in the end, I think the work really pays off. I'd be curious to see how he'd color correct Amélie today with all the advancements in digital color correction. It's interesting that the 3 films which look the least like Jeunet's other films in terms of color were all directed for American studios. Alien Resurrection, which he directed for 20th Century Fox, the pilot for Casanova, which he directed for Amazon Studios, and his most recent film, Big Bug, which he made for Netflix. Big Bug features Jeunet's trademark red and green color scheme in many scenes, but it also branches out and features blues and purples, which are really not prominent in any of Jeunet's other films. Jeunet likes picture credits in his movies. I really like this a lot. How many times have you seen a movie and thought, who is that actor? Or, I want to see what his name is in the credits, but I don't remember his character name. Well, you don't have that problem watching Jeunet's movies. He said he feels like it's the equivalent of a curtain call on stage, and it gives each actor their chance to be appreciated, and the audience can applaud for their favorite characters. When he was filming Alien Resurrection, Sigourney Weaver allegedly told him, "I can tell you really like working with actors from the way you feature them in your credits." I think it's great that he adds these into his films, and I haven't seen really any other directors doing this kind of thing. Jean-Pierre Jeunet stands out as a visionary director with a uniquely playful and inventive style. His meticulous attention to detail, distinctive use of color, and innovative camera techniques create a cinematic experience that is both visually stunning and emotionally resonant. Jeunet's ability to blend whimsical elements with deep storytelling ensures that his films leave a lasting impression on audiences. Whether it's through the magical realism of Amélie, the darkly fantastical world of The City of Lost Children, or the playful revenge tale of Micmacs, Jeunet's work consistently challenges the boundaries of conventional filmmaking. If you haven't already, I highly recommend diving into his filmography. You're in for a treat.